Hey there. Welcome to Satin Hill Farmstead. Is that what we're calling it now? Or is it just a homestead now? I called it, I know yesterday I mentioned my farm, and I don't have a farm anymore, so I guess it's a homestead now. That's interesting. I never thought it would go that direction, but it has. So today we're gonna work on the tunnel. You guys probably saw last week that I did a bunch of clearing out in here, and I got it completely cleared out, and we're gonna get this all prepped for beds for planting. And really, there's really not that much weed pressure. I mean, I pulled out all the plants, and you guys probably can't even see the weeds in here. Well, it's a lettuce, so I don't know. There's not much in here. We have 36-inch beds in here with 18-inch walkways. I had like smaller. I've tried a bunch of different layouts in here, and this seems to be the best for this 12-foot wide tunnel. It's a 48-foot long tunnel, so I think the beds are 44, 45 feet, and a couple feet on either end. And I don't know. I've mentioned before about 30-inch versus 36-inch, but this will work fine in here. And what we'll do is we'll do all of the trellising crops like tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and all that. We'll do that in the middle here, and we'll just tie the trellis up to the top, and then we'll have the most height possible. And we can stagger them, so we could probably get like 2 rows in here, which is what I did last year. I did 2 rows of tomatoes in here. So today, what I want to do is get the beds prepped. I couldn't find enough string here to string up all the beds, but I really only need to prep 2 beds today to start planting, because I'm going to do, as I said, trellising crops here, and then I'm going to do greens and other lower stuff on this side and put the irrigation back in. So with any bed prep, I always like to string out the lines. I leave the stakes in the end of the beds all the time, so I know where the beds are supposed to be. You can see down here, the lines are pretty good. They're not dead on, but they're pretty good. So that is what I'm going to first do, is to just try to pull some of the wood chips out of the beds. If there are any wood chips in the beds, I'll go through and spot weed whatever I can, and then we're going to broad fork, add some compost, maybe some amendments, and then tilth it and be ready to go. So that's what we're going to do today. So I just want to talk to you guys for a second about no-till. You guys know I'm a big fan of no-till strategies in general, and I think this is a testament to that. And this isn't a fair trial, essentially, because there was no irrigation here for months, so things aren't going to germinate. But really, the beds are super clean, and once you eliminate those weeds at the beginning, right before you build beds, if you can get those weeds under control before you even start growing, they really don't come back. The one thing that I've seen in the beds today is right along the edge here, I am getting some small weeds, and I think those are just blowing in from outside. And no matter what kind of soil management practice you have, you're going to get air-blown weeds coming in, like seeds coming in and then getting started in here. But overall, it looks great, guys. So again, when you don't till, you don't bring weed seeds up to the surface to germinate. So get rid of the weeds ahead of time, get your beds established, don't till anymore, and the weeds will stay under control. And by adding lots of compost on top, that also acts as a mulch. And having other plants in there growing all the time to compete with those weeds and to create a canopy and smother them out is also helpful. Let's talk about broad forking. I have been broad forking less over time, and it is very contextual based on your soil, what you're growing, what's coming out, what's going in, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people broad fork on every bed flip, and I don't think there's any real harm to it other than it takes up time and energy. And you'll sort of see how your soil's going. My beds out here after 2 years, they didn't really need much broad forking. My plan this year, if I was still growing here, was to broad fork at the beginning of the season and then probably be good. So it really depends on what you have going on. And is it worth buying a broad fork if you don't have one? I think it depends. And I know that's not a great answer. I got this broad fork. It was like 200 bucks. I really don't like it because the tines bend all the time. I'm hopefully going to be getting a new one soon. And it's done all right for me. But I think, especially if you're a home gardener and you're thinking about, I don't want to buy this. I don't have 30-inch wide beds. I'm only have so many square feet, whatever. Buy one of these. All right, this is like what's called a digging fork. It's unlike a pitchfork or a hay fork where you're going to be lifting hay and stuff very light. These have very heavy-duty tines. And I like this one in particular because it's got a round handle, so you can also broad fork with this just by putting it in the ground and then just pulling it back. And this round handle is really nice, so you can put both hands on it and just work your way, just work your way across, that sort of thing. I'll put a link down below for this one if you want to check it out. The other benefit of the little guy is, for me in the tunnel here, you know, I couldn't get the broad fork in here because the handles would be hitting the top, so I can get in much tighter spaces. So that's why I have this in here today, because you can see that, you know, I can be loosening up the soil even in a tight space. So if you have like a raised bed or you're working in a corner or something like that, one of these guys could be super helpful. The broad fork here that I'm using is for a 30-inch bed, so I have these 36-inch beds, so I'll just have to sort of stagger my way across the beds as I go down, and that's about it. And remember, when you're broad forking, you're not trying to like just, let me move back a little bit, you're not trying to like really break the soil open. I mean, you're not trying to like really disturb the soil too much. You want to just go till you, just so you crack the surface, pull it back at that angle, and then back down. And I like to work backwards, so this sort of pattern. You can see the soil is pretty soft in here. I don't really have to do too much work to get the broad fork to move around, and I've been growing here for 2 years. Generally, this is a lot of like bi-rotation stuff, so like tomatoes in the summer, wintertime has been greens. So not a ton of turns, but there's plenty of like root structure in the ground, and it hasn't been tilled ever in here, so soil's in great shape, and I just keep adding compost. So gonna get this done. One other thing I want to mention about broad forking today is that generally I'll flip a bed multiple times during the season, but these beds are basically going to stay planted all year. I'll just be swapping out like certain sections when I'm swapping out crops. So for me, it was crucial that I got my broad forking done right now, and that way I can just keep the beds full throughout the year. So I gotta get some compost now, so I'm gonna grab the wheelbarrow. Let's go see how much compost I have left. Not much, probably. This is all the compost I have left, and I have no idea. You see, I still have a huge pile of wood chips here, and hopefully in the next, I don't know, month or so, I'd like to get this out of my driveway. So we'll do some mulching around the greenhouse and stuff. But yeah, I got to see what's under here, see what we have left. Ooh, looks like we got a little bit left here. So this is commercial compost that I was using for my beds last year, but I got a few wheelbarrows left. So I'll use these for these 2 beds and then save a little bit more for that 3rd bed. So you guys saw I don't have that much compost left. So what I'm probably gonna do is do 2 wheelbarrows per bed, and hopefully I'll have a little bit left over for random stuff that I'll need throughout the season, but I really don't want to have to buy any more compost. You really can't go too heavy with the compost for most situations. I don't want to get too much into the deep compost mulch system here, and the pros and cons of it, but yeah, adding a lot of compost is super helpful, and yeah, I'm going to get this on the beds. Well, it's getting pretty warm out here today. It's supposed to be almost 90. This is crazy. It's late March. Got the compost laid out. I did 2 wheelbarrows per bed. I probably would have done more, as I mentioned, but I really don't have that much compost. I am not buying any more compost right now. So what I like to do is I like to spread it out first by hand with a hard rake like this, just to get it sort of just spread out. I'll put down amendments, and then I'll use the tilther, and then I'll finish it with a landscape rake. There's discussion about, you know, should I broad fork first, or should I add compost and then broad fork, or vice versa, and I don't think it matters, guys. I think all that stuff is just, I don't know. I don't think it really matters, especially because over the year I probably won't be broad forking that much. In fact, these beds won't get broad forked again probably all year, and so I'll just be adding compost as it's needed. So I don't know. Sometimes things get overthought, right? Get this raked out. Well, it's definitely hotter than I thought it was gonna be today, but it's cool. We'll push through here. let's talk about amendments. I've used a few over the last couple of years, and a couple things I want to point out is I always try to recommend people using natural amendments as much as possible, and also amendments where they're sourcing them from local waste streams. If we're going to be talking about regenerative or sustainable agriculture, we need to talk about utilizing waste streams that are already there and then using that in some way to build soil and grow food with it. So the more that you can do that and incorporate that in your farm, your garden, your homestead, the better. And so I'd say 3 out of the 4 that I'm going to talk about here, though they are, at least some of the ingredients are sourced locally. So let's get into that. The compost that I use, a lot of the inputs for that is food waste that is generated in North Carolina from universities, colleges, schools, businesses, all that kind of stuff. So I feel good about using the compost that I've been getting. Another one is a dry composted chicken manure. It's made by a company called Harmony, and that is manure that is sourced from North Carolina from chicken facilities, and that one is a 5-4-3, so it's a pretty balanced fertilizer. It is also a pretty slow release fertilizer, and that is recommended to be at a rate of 35 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And I'm not going to tell you how much it would be for this bed or any other bed. You got to figure that out for yourself. These are pretty weird beds. The next one is, and I don't have that much chicken manure left, so I'm probably just going to use a couple pounds per bed and try to get it out of my shed. I'm trying to like clear things out of there. The next one is alfalfa meal, and I really like alfalfa meal. It's a less potent fertilizer. It's a 3-2-2, but also pretty balanced, and it also supposedly helps increase microbial activity, so that's cool. I don't have any direct results for that, but direct information I can give you about that, but it has been cool, and that's recommended at a rate of 25 pounds per 1,000 square feet. The next one is feather meal, and that one is also a local sourced product. That's just literally like ground up feathers from a chicken facility, and that one's purely like a nitrogen addition. That's a 1400. So if you need a nitrogen boost, that's a great thing to add. And that one's recommended at 250 pounds per acre. And so remember, this 43,560 square feet per acre. I think I got that right. So those are the main fertilizers. I'm probably gonna do a mixture of all of them just because I have them, and I'm not gonna be flipping these beds a lot. I'm just gonna be planting as I go. Maybe I'll be adding a little bit of fertilizer in the spot as I pull plants out and put plants in. So I'm gonna put all that stuff in, and then we will get this all smoothed out with the tilther and a rake. So this is like the chicken manure here, just a dried, pelleted, crumbly type bit. So get this stuff spread out and get that other stuff in there. So when I apply these kinds of dry fertilizers, I like to use a pitcher like this, and I like to go back and forth in a zigzag pattern, and that way when I come back over it with the tilther, or if you're just using a rake, you'll get a nice application. So just go down the bed in a zigzag pattern. This is the alfalfa meal. It smells really nice. This is the feather meal. It's like a powdery stuff. This stuff does not smell good. So one thing I want to say, guys, if you don't have access to this stuff, don't sweat it. It really depends on what your soil's like, what your compost is like. There's a lot of variables here. I have this stuff, I'm just gonna put it in the ground, and a lot of these, really like low potent sort of fertilizers, you can't really overdo it essentially. I mean, you can, but I'm not gonna stress about it. So, if your compost is good, I know a lot of people that grow just in compost, and last year I kind of went to that strategy because I was adding compost in every bed flip, maybe a little bit of alfalfa meal, but I have this stuff. I'm gonna put a lot of stuff in the ground because I'm not gonna mess with it too much after I get it planted. So after this, I'm gonna use the tilther. I've showed this in many other videos. If you don't have that, no worries, you can use a rake. It's really, to me, I think of it as like a power rake. It really it goes down like an inch and a half maybe, and just gives it a really nice seed bed. So that's what I'm gonna use now. Last step is I'm just gonna rake this smooth, and I have this 36-inch wide landscape rake. You can use any rake, guys. These are just tools that I have because I've been market gardening here, but you guys know that you can pretty much make do with whatever. So save money when you can. When you're doing something professionally, and you have to do it every day or a couple times a week, and you want the right tool, the specific tool to do that job, to do it cleanly, efficiently, and save time and make it look really good. So, you know, you have the right tools. But if you're doing this at home, whatever works, guys. Just get it as smooth as you can. Get a nice bed. In the end, it doesn't really matter. If you're just growing food for yourself, it matters what comes out of the ground. So. Well, these beds are ready to plant. I'm just gonna get some wood chips in here now to fill in. I really like wood chipping the walkways. It does a couple of reasons. I made a whole video about that, so check out that video. But the gist of it is, it obviously keeps the ground covered, which is super important, and it adds some fungal life to the, to the beds as well, because the compost is very bacterially dominated. So it's cool, and it also just aesthetically looks really nice. So that's why I love wood chips in the walkways, and I'm gonna get those in now. So I get my wood chips from local tree companies for free. Call around, see if you guys can make that happen if you want to get some wood chips. It's not available everywhere you live. Sometimes it's a little bit harder, sometimes it's impossible. You can use leaves, you can use straw probably, you can use whatever you want. But wood chips are, a lot of trees around here, so it's easy to get wood chips. The best way to apply that I found is by just using buckets, and just it's just a lot more accurate. You just go up and down the beds like this, or up and down the walkways, I should say. And there you go. Get your mulching done. I always try to get the level about the same of the walkway and the bed, and you guys can maybe be able to see right now it's a little bit higher than the bed, but that's okay. This will compress as you walk on it a little bit, and it will break down over time too. You might be able to see some of this is pretty moist, and this is just in my pile in my driveway. It rained a couple days ago probably, but you can see it also holds in a lot of moisture, which is obviously cool for the garden. All right, wood chips are done. It looks great. I'm gonna wait to do this pathway or walkway over here until I set up the other string line. There is a little bit of a drop off from the bed, but it doesn't rain in here, so obviously I'm in a tunnel. But if it was outside, I'd probably get some wood chips in there just to keep the soil from moving. But otherwise, pretty happy. I'm gonna call it a day today for working outside. I'm gonna go in, eat some lunch, edit this vlog, hang out with the fam, that kind of stuff. Tomorrow, what I'm gonna do is install the drip irrigation back in here and do some planting. Pretty pumped, pretty pumped. If you want to check out a video about irrigation, I got one up here, and it's about overhead and also the drip system that's in here. A lot of cool stuff for you guys to think about, but overall, good push today. It's pretty warm also, and just enjoying it. And I hope everyone's farms, homesteads, families are doing well right now. You guys are starting to grow food, or at least plan on it. It's awesome, guys. We got this. So don't forget to hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.